Morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you who have joined this second series of Fireside chat session on Metaverse titled Engaging Users in a World Within a World, primarily focusing on building a hyper-interactive UI and UX and the challenges associated with this extended new virtual ecosystem we're talking about. So I'm Kedar Mohite. I'm an associate director with Birlasoft's media and broadcast team. And we have with us Dr. Ahmad a serial ICT entrepreneur with 42 plus years of hands-on experience. His PhD studies way back in mid-80s in the AI led to creation of several game-changing business and technology innovations, earning him 36 plus inductions in Who's Who in the world, along with US Presidential Gold Medal and many awards. He's currently serving as the CEO of NetStairs. Welcome, Dr. Ahmad, on our Fireside chat session.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Perfect. So, Ahmad, we're going to start pretty simple and just going to ask you, define Metaverse for us.
Well, Metaverse in a simple words goes back to days of 1992, where a novel called Snow Crash, published by a gentleman with the name of Neil Stephenson, who famously coined the term Metaverse. And he referred to a 3D virtual world inhabited by avatars of real people. And one of the ways that I can explain this along with the storytelling is present you with some slides that the audience can join us. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So what we'll do is the screen share that you're about to see right now is just a PowerPoint presentation, but gives you a visual at the same time that I'm talking about. The Metaverse really is not a concrete reality yet. It's just like when we were starting with the Web 1.0. Everybody had ideas, but nobody knew really where it's going. So while the vision of its 3D immersive world, where we will be able to spend a lot of time socializing, working, entertainment, and learning, it is a combination of virtual reality in technology, augmented reality, AR, what we call mixed reality, and gaming. And then you bring additional items that we refer to as cryptocurrency, social medias, and monetization. And that creates what we call the Metaverse magic. Now, Metaverse, unlike a lot of things like Verge publication covers the Metaverse, that is really tough to explain these days. It doesn't necessarily exist. It's partly a dream of the future of the internet. And really is where you can bring art, science, and technology and create new experiences where you encapsulate some current trends in online infrastructure, including the growth of real-time 3D worlds. And along with that, a metaverse that is a new network of a 3D virtual world, that all of these networks are ultimately going to get connected together, pretty much like a science fiction that is described by hypothetical iteration of the internet as a single universal virtual world that facilitates all the other metaverses. So that's basically a little explanation for your metaverse.
Perfect. I mean, so that's pretty interesting, and the schematic which you absolutely showed, where it's an intersection across three or four different concepts. Now, so it's pretty complex, right? And a couple of aspects which you mentioned is it's still not predefined. So what we really want to understand is what kind of monetization aspects. So you interact with clients on a very regular basis. So what kind of real monetization aspects which are clients looking at on a day-to-day basis?
Great question. The way that it comes to us is based upon different business models. For example, when we are talking with clients that they're moving from Web 2.0 to the Web 3.0, we try to create an analogy and let them understand that in the Web 2.0, companies like AWS, Dropbox, PayPal, for monetization, banks, everybody else really got into this stratosphere, if you will. And now with the Web 3.0, there are going to be new players. And in fact, new players are reinventing the marketplace. One of the things with the Web 3.0 versus what you call metaverse is a lot of people confuse the two subjects. But what we have learned, Kedar, is the fast track, fast transition, and fast adaptation that people are putting us into that kind of structure. They don't understand it completely. They want you to handhold them and help them out with the process, but at the same time, they're motivated to participate and get involved. So one of the areas that when you talked about Wall Street, and monetization, really you got to look at it, what is it to them? I'll bring an example of the old days, like not too old, but cloud, right? We used to have data centers, we used to have ISPs, we used to have services, right? We used to manage how much memory, RAM, CPUs, all of these things. Then we packaged it, we called it cloud, right? And Wall Street embraced it, and then they created the opportunity that now we have moved most of our technologies into cloud services. So with that in mind, again, we look at monetization from different ways. But one thing that has to be really understood, unfortunately, a little time, is that you have to look at metaverse versus Web 3.0, where Web 3.0 is really a decentralized internet. It's built on distributed technologies like blockchain or DAO, known as decentralized autonomous organizations. And then you integrate that into that solution. So they're pretty much like a yin and a yang. They work together. Back to you.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, and you did show a pretty interesting, again, a schematic, which would be interesting for our audiences on, basically the, looking at the complexity of the overall workflow and the ecosystem which needs to be. So the next aspect, what I really want to understand from you and from your experience on a day-to-day basis is you need to build a very compelling UI and UX to basically, to help, consumers interact with themselves, with the assets, with multiple different stakeholders, which you have absolutely flashed on the screen right now. So what do you believe is couple of challenges which anyone will face in building this intrusive as well as interactive, hyperlocal or hyper-personalized UI and UX within the metaverse?
Well, there is right now the industry leaders and groups of visionaries. They're really trying to blur the line between virtual and reality. And that is first thing, because now your imagination is your only limitation. Same thing with the UX and the UI, because we see different objectives, different what we call vision, mission, goals, and KPI estimation, because some of these things have not really been identified. Companies are now integrating services together to create that kind of experience. So when you start looking at that kind of things, there are areas that, for example, we call it a whole new interactive world. When you talk to consumers in general, they talk about metaverse is where the money is, where the cryptos are, where they can go have fun with different social media and go from location to locations in different verses. When you talk with organizations, mostly businesses, institutions such as banks, financial institutions, fintechs, things like that, insurance companies, they all want to be in the verse, but they don't know how. So they create different use cases. Example of a recent one was just yesterday or a couple of days ago. A client of mine, Pernod Ricard, that we have been serving them for decades, they worked on a project with another group that basically they created a new brand of whiskey from Chivas Regal, and they called it Moxie. Moxie was a character from a game that they used, which is an old Western American, night bars that you used to come with your gun blazers and shoot, and the girls used to be there. Moxie is that character. So Moxie is the storyteller, and Moxie brand became the Chivas. In less than 4 hours, they sold out their entire inventory. That's the result that you're looking at. And
Nope.
That speaks for itself on KPI. So when a plan is executed well with the UX a CX experience, and an objective. The objective can be an event, a launch of a party, a social media gathering, a place where you can go and do commerce. Social commerce is becoming very strong in that market, as we are talking with a lot of clients in Hong Kong and in Korea, that they are taking those kind of initiatives. In fact, there is a group that they just created what we call the K-pop, that is made of 4 avatars and 4 humans. And then they mix them all together with the virtual reality and broadcast them. TV shows like Fox already created metaverse TV shows. So as you can see, content is going to become the driving force of the consumers. Consumers' data is going to drive the direction of the rating. And then obviously advertisers are going to populate the space with the sponsors and the programs. So in general, when we are talking about monetization, there are several options. The objects that they create, like the starship and so forth, it becomes somebody else's property that you buy or rent from them. So wouldn't it be cool if you had a spaceship that inside the game that you could do whatever you want to do and then make an offering to other players? This kind of things are becoming part of the trend that we are seeing. Another one that is most important that I see a good traction from Israel, from a colleague of ours, is from Hype Sports in esports game and in extreme sports and in gamers. This group in particular, what they do, they help out the startups in this market. They put them in front of the brands because they already have the relationship. And when the brand decides to partner with the client, then they become the funders. So they really work on a backward situation. They put the demand in front. If your product and service are acceptable with any of their clients, then they turn around and they enter into an investment opportunity. Back to you.
That's interesting, Dr. Ahmad, because you touched upon so many multiple sub verticals within just media and entertainment. So just a question for you now. Each of the target audiences of these basically, so let's take a very good example, esports, or basically live streaming, live concerts. They absolutely have different needs when they interact with the service, or basically interact within a metaverse, or basically an extended reality. Now, so that requires us to take the best of each of these basically industries and then merge into a single ecosystem. So what I really want to understand from you is, how does the next generation UI UX developers or development enterprises like yours, basically, or vendors, what would be those characteristics or functionalities which you guys would be supporting for helping media enterprises to support for this journey to be precise?
Well, the area that you pointed out is extremely valuable, because one of the things is we saw that on our side and on the client side, they have to retool. Investment on hardware and software are necessary. It just can't be done, because you need GPU, you need CPU, you need more RAM, you need better accelerator cards, you need multi devices that you can do a greater output, such as 4K camera, 8Ks, and so forth. That right now, for example, we are working on a project with one of the leading temples in India. But the general idea is, first, you need to get into the customer's mind. That's the first challenge that we understand. What do they want to do? Okay, and then you have to look in and reach out to a tool set that it accommodates to the closest realization that you can bring. Example of that is we work with groups like Linden Lab, that they are probably the oldest guys in the industry with a lot of intellectual properties and patents for 17 years out in San Francisco. Then you got Epic guys with Unreal Engine, that it's really great because they've been in the gaming business, they understand it, okay? They understand processing and the user experience, and they bring a lot of digital assets into the equation that you can obtain. NVIDIA has been one of my favorites that I've been watching. In fact, this coming week, I have a major meeting with NVIDIA because they're introduced the multiverse and AI, and obviously they're GPU provider. So what they're doing is helping developers with the complete tool sets. But it's relatively expensive. You know, you got to look into a few $100,000 to start, so to speak, as your tool set, depending on how many developers you want to add to the team. Roblox and other what we call consulting companies like Accenture, KPMG, they all recently announced they created a division for Metaverse, and they're providing the services. So my suggestion always is, before you get into the UX, understand and learn about different things. Like Unity does certain things for you through WebGL. For example, Unreal does certain things. Epic does something things, you know. Meta is, to me, is very premature right now, although they have potentially a possibility of expansion and distribution, but not everybody wants to go with Meta. Corporate, we are talking about. These are clients that they are, you know, Fortune 500s. So they want to create their own stratosphere, if you will, their own verse, and then connect their verse to other verses, or enter into a existing verse where they can start learning from it. We also seen the same thing, Kedar, with venture capitalists, where they want to get into the business, but they want to back and support an organization and walk with them so they can add to their own learning curve, because like it says, it's really so many variables that it's unknown that it makes it difficult. But in short, just to summarize, best UX experience is identify the user's requirements, understand what their vision, mission, goals, and objectives are, include the budget and the timeline that they understand that you have to spend the time, plan the campaign, okay, and launch the campaign accordingly with an anticipation. Back to you.
That's fantastic. I mean, honestly, I wanted to summarize it this way, but I think you have done it beautifully about, you know, how to engage users within a world with which is a world within you know, our entire hemisphere. But I mean, just to add to what you absolutely, you know, provided us with nuggets is, it's not about looking at a couple of workflows, but it's a pretty complex ecosystem, and trying to really build like what we did a couple of years back with IoT, where you know, you have a platform and then you have multiple players with multiple services as well as technology stack, with UI and UX being one of the most important workflows within this space. But then first trying to really understand what your users need, and then trying to build those, you know, intrusive or interactive UI and UX with multiple different players, like what you rightly mentioned, would be key for sustainability into this space. So I think it's pretty interesting, and you know, I really thank you for your time on this, and you know, the kind of you know, snippets which you have shared as part of this Fireside. So thanks, Ahmad.
Thank you.
And have a great day ahead.